Breaking news in a little more than about half an hour. Alex Murdaugh will be sentenced for the murder of his wife and son. A jury convicting him of those murders Thursday night. And joining us right now to talk a little bit more about the case, South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. What a busy time for this community, for you yourself, for the prosecutors who made the case and the jury believed them. So I know that for a lot of people, they watched all of this go down and they made a decision as the case was unfolding. Do you believe the juries already had their mind made up? The jurors already had their mind made up before the closing arguments?
Well, first, Adrienne, thank you for having me on. This is a great day for the people of South Carolina, where they got to see justice delivered to someone who desperately needed a measure of it. I heard earlier this morning that one of the jurors did an interview, and I think it was 9-2 and 1. It was 9 guilty, 2 not guilty, 1 unsure, and then after about 45 minutes of deliberation, they came to the decision that he was guilty of these crimes. And so I'm incredibly grateful for the attention they paid in this case. And I want to give a shout out to my team and the men and women in law enforcement who supported this investigation.
You've talked a lot about what the prosecution had to go through, living in dorm-like conditions, getting on each other's nerves over the course of several weeks, but saying it was all worth it. Any other light you want to shed on exactly how tense this was?
I mean, listen, you don't know how big this case is. Well, you think you know how big it is until you get into it, and then when you look back at what you've just accomplished, it's amazing. I mean, this is the longest trial in criminal court in South Carolina history. It was complex, it was complicated, it had the eyes of the world and the nation were on everything that was being done, and it was just an incredible amount of scrutiny, and I'm so proud of the team that we put together. And again, I want people to stop and take a moment to realize, all the sensationalism aside, 2 people were brutally murdered, a family was destroyed, and a community was torn apart. And we were able to deliver justice. And hopefully for those who thought some were above the law, they know that no one is above the law now, and that we were able to deliver justice to Alex Murdaugh.
You say that it was a fatal move on Alex's part to take the stand.
Oh, absolutely. And this is a person who made his career of giving closing arguments to a jury. He was able to win major verdicts out of juries, by appealing to them. And I think he believed in his mind this was his closing argument in this case. But when they saw the kennel video and they saw the lie after lie after lie, and then they heard him get up there on the stand, and I just don't think it resonated with him. I think that probably was what put the nail in his coffin. And again, I can't thank the jurors enough for coming to the decision that they did. You say nail in the coffin. I have to ask you, why no death penalty in this case? I'm not making any comments on sentencing. Obviously, in a few moments, we'll be in there, so the state, I'm not going to talk about that. But I do want to bring it back to the fact that the amazing work of all of people, everyone in law enforcement, our prosecution office, what we did to bring justice to Alex Murdaugh and hopefully reinstill faith in a lot of people who doubted the criminal justice system would work. I just want to remind people that it did work in this case, and I'm incredibly proud of that fact.
You've served as Attorney General in South Carolina. This is your 4th term. You were just reelected. In all of your years, just rate this kind of case on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being just the most horrendous case that you've ever seen.
A 20. It was. I mean, the crime scene was graphic. It was horrific. The facts around it were horrific, and the decades building up to it were very interesting and complicated. And so it's a very complex case. A lot of circumstantial evidence, but there was no doubt in my mind when I signed his indictments for murdering Maggie and Paul Murdaugh. There was no doubt in my mind that he was guilty. There was no doubt in my mind that he did it, and I believed with all of my heart that we could bring him to justice.
Really quickly, I know we have to get to our next guest here, but I have to ask you, in terms of justice for Mallory Beach and the case of the boating accident, what happens with that case?
Well, obviously, we charged Paul in that case. He was the defendant in that case, and obviously, sadly, he was murdered, so that case was dismissed.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to get clarity on that. Thank you so much, Attorney General, for being with us.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Adrienne.
And Ash. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.